Well, hello and welcome to Transform Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. And today you see me on my camera wearing my Ranger Dave hat, and that's because we're going to talk a little bit about trees, paper, forestry, things like that. When I stepped outside of my office yesterday, I was smelling this like burnt wood smell, and I realized that those were from fires that had traveled thousands of miles away. So I decided I'd look up a couple of other interesting facts about trees and forestry. Turns out that there are, for each person in the United States, consumes about 680 pounds of paper. By consume, I mean use. I don't think they actually eat it. And they go through about 7 trees. That seems like a lot of trees. Today, actually, I am here to talk about paper. And one of the great things about TransForm, of course, is that it can save you an awful lot of paper in terms of forms. But there are times when you actually need to use paper and get printouts for certain reasons. And today I'm going to be going over that. So I guess it's appropriate that I take off the Ranger Dave hat. So let's go do that. All right, let's get started. I'm going to drop off camera here and show my screen. And it should be playing. I'm flying solo here today, so if someone could let me know in the questions box whether or not you can see me, whether or not you can hear me, and whether or not you could see my screen, that would be terrific. And I'm just going to wait a moment while someone types that in, just to make sure that I'm coming through. All right. Okay, wonderful. Thanks very much. All right, so let's get started with our presentation. I'll start here from the beginning. So today we are going to talk about paper. So a lot of times when we are working with new clients and they're going to do a TransForm integration with a system they already have, or if they're going to use a standalone TransForm, often they still need paper printouts for various reasons. This is definitely true of governments, it's true with courts, but there are other institutions as well in which having a hard copy or a paper version of some piece of information that's going to go into a file cabinet is critically important. So this is, today we're going to be talking a little bit about how you can get printouts of your TransForm information. Let's go ahead into TransForm. Let's pop over here into Safari. Oops, leave my PowerPoint behind. We will go into TransForm. Here we are at a dashboard. So here we've got a dashboard that is meant to be printed out on a daily basis. This is our daily report, again, for our fictitious field services company. It shows the number of service calls. Well, first of all, which technicians were on duty for that particular day, how many service calls did they go on, and how many minutes did they spend at each of those service calls. There might be other information. I made up this example. There's probably like which customers were serviced, how much money was collected that day. There's all kinds of things. How many parts were used. There's probably a bazillion things, but I think you get the idea here from this example. So the way that this dashboard is intended to be used is that you set or you pick a date up here in this date picker. And after you choose the date, the that becomes the selection for the entire dashboard, not just for that one tile. And that date gets reflected here in this tile. Oops, clicked on that. I was going to get to that in a minute. And this actually shows all of the, if I do click on that, it'll show me all of the records that were entered in on that particular date. And then I have a couple of graphs down here, which you've seen. So one thing that I showed you last week, we were going into user inputs, is usually I was doing the user inputs here at the tile level. And I was pointing out that you can do filtering at the dashboard level. In other words, have all of the records filtered here before they show up in the tiles. But you can also do user inputs up here at the dashboard level. So let me go ahead and show you that. It's very much the same as setting it up for a tile. You just go into user inputs, and then you choose what the variable name will be for your user input, what text you want to display, and then the type of variable. And again, like with tiles, you can choose whether you want these to appear side by side up at the top here, or if you want them to each start on a new line. So I just created one called date, and I use that date as part of a filter. So here's my filter, and actually I didn't use that user input here. I kind of cheated. I hard-coded it to a particular date, but what I could have done is I could have popped down here, gone into date, and then selected, selected field or user input, and then selected my variable. I didn't do that in this case because I was interested in comparing a date field against what's called a date time field, and there are some issues with that, which is why I'm hard coding it today. But next week, we're going to talk all about doing date comparisons, date arithmetic, and date formatting, which are going to be tried hard to do once you see how they're done, but it's something I didn't want to get into today, which is why I'm showing you a hard-coded example. Anyway, when you make that selection here, that user input is then carried down and displayed here in my tile. I'm sorry, I keep clicking on it. Let's pop over here to Daily Report, and I'm going to click here and show you how this tile works. And in the Daily Report, this is a template type or a text type of tile. I just said, here's the daily report, and then I said, I want to show what the user input is for that. And I found that right here. It's $dash.dashboard user inputs dot, and then the date or the variable that I created up here in user inputs for the dashboard. So how did I know that that was the format that I needed to know? Well, I will show it to you because it is over in the documentation. Let's pop over here to help. That should open up. Hold on a second. I'm having some weird issues with my browser. Let me go ahead and reset that. All right, I'll go over here to help. When I'm on the dashboard screen, I'll go over here to help. I'm totally editing this out before it goes live. So forgot there are in fact two helps. It's funny, showing you the help is the hard part. There are two helps. This help button takes you to general information about Alpha Transform. This one takes you to specific information about the dashboard, and this is the one I really should have clicked. But so when I click on that, you can scroll down and it gives you all kinds of useful information right here, but I tend to go down and find there's some links in here to the TransForm Analytics Quick Start Guide, which is our documentation system. That's the one I prefer to use. So I'm going to click on that. And again, I will remind you that you can scroll down and take a look at a whole bunch of TPL variables that are available to you when you're setting up these tiles. Scroll way down, a little further. There we go. Dash.tile.user inputs. That's how I found that. But there's all kinds of other things that you can use. We've used rows before to count the number of items that are in a list. There's all kinds of other information you can use there as well. So let's go back here to Alpha Transform. So that's how I set up that tile. Also, as a quick reminder, when you're putting together dashboards, it's nice to choose nice colors. And one way to do that is to use a color palette generator. I know I talk about this every week, but this is really a good thing to do. Go through and choose the colors that you want to use throughout, grab their hexadecimal values. I'm using something called colors or coolors.co, coolors.co for generating palettes. If you're working with a client, they already may have a color palette that their designer has created. And so when you're putting these together, so when you edit this tile, for example, you can choose, in this case, as part of the tile template, to include a background color. So what I did here was I just created a div and a background color. Now, one thing to take note of is that if you make these divs too big, like let's say I edited another BR, for example, another break, what you're going to end up with is something you don't want. I'll show you what that is, and that is scroll bar. See that scroll bar there? I mean, you might want it on your dashboard, but you're not going to want it if you're using your dashboard to do a printout. So I tend to just build a div, and I give it just as many lines as will fit. I should be okay now. I should be okay now. Nope. Watch while I break it. Hang on. Delete. There we go. So that I don't get that scroll bar there. The next thing, the next one was service calls by technician. And actually for that one and for the next one, I had those already built in a dashboard that I showed you before. So I'm not going to show you how to build them again, but I will show you how you can take a tile from another dashboard and import it into this dashboard. So what I did was when I built this tile is I went over and I switched to my field service dashboard. That's the one we were working with last week. And when that opens, it'll take a moment. It's got 4,000 records it needs to plunk through before it opens. And all I did was I went down to total billable hours by technician, and I tapped on that and I said edit tile, because that was the tile I wanted to copy. And over here, you'll see there's an import export link. So let me click on that link, and you will see over in here is a window, and it contains all of the definitions that were used to create that. So all I did was I right-clicked and I copied that and I put it into my clipboard. And then I can close it. And then I'm going to go back. Let me close the help while I'm here. And I can go back, cancel out, cancel, to my daily report dashboard. And let's say I'm adding a new tile. So add a new tile, and it doesn't matter which one because I'm going to overwrite what's in it. Say a blank chart. So then what I do is I go into my blank tile and I say import export, and then I take everything that's here and I replace it with my previous one. And when I click update, it's going to say, yes, go ahead and update that. And you will see that, aha, it has now brought over all of my settings like I did before. Now, I already have this on here, so I'm not going to save it. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. But I wanted to show you that import export method. Let me go ahead and delete this tile. All right, so enough about setting up dashboards. What about printing? Well, right built into the dashboard, and I showed this to you last week, but there's a thing called export. And if you click on the export link, you're going to get a dialog box that asks you if you want to send a copy of this to an email recipient, or if you want to just download it yourself to your computer. Let's go ahead and click download file. Actually, what I want to do is download PDF. Give that a moment while it generates the PDF, and there it went. I'll leave full screen here for a minute. And I'm going to go into downloads, and there it is. Let's open it up. And there is a PDF. And you'll notice that it isn't the full screen, so it doesn't say, I'm going to close this one. So it doesn't say, it doesn't have all this stuff up here. It really just starts here and below, because that's probably what you want on your dashboard. Now, there are a couple of artifacts that show up here, like these little menu or hamburger icons. And I foresee us actually removing those in the future, since it doesn't really make sense to print out a menu when you want to print out. So that's an upcoming change. But what you'll see is it pretty much prints out what you want. Okay, so that's one way of building like a report type of interface. But what if you just wanted to print an individual record? In fact, let's take a look at this particular technician. They only went on one sales call that day, so I'm going to tap on that. Oh, okay, there we go. And there's that record. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say export selected records. And I'm going to choose the form view, because that's the view that I had set up when I built the form. And I'm going to say download as a PDF file. Give that a moment. And what you'll see is it's taken this rather long form. Let's open this up in my PDF viewer. And it is nicely paginated for you. And if you're wondering, why is there a broken image? Does it not show images? That's just the way I set up the form. I was calling a local file as part of a TPL example. It's a little bit out of left field, but no, if you had actually taken a picture and this was a picture that you had saved with your form, you would see the picture. It does in fact do pictures. All right, so those are the two ways that you can print out things that'll go into a folder using Alpha TransForm. Now we have done, we've shown you using Alpha Anywhere before, and if you do use Alpha Anywhere, even the Community Edition, you can build out some really nice reporting if you like to with that. It's a little bit more involved, but you can get literally anything you want. The nice thing about doing it this way, though, is everything is done here in TransForm as opposed to using Alpha Anywhere. Go ahead and save my dashboard here. So let's go over it. Let me make sure I covered everything I want to talk about today. Oh yeah, there's one other thing I want to talk about today. Remember at the beginning of the example, every time I kept trying to show you this, I would accidentally click on it, it would bring me over to the dashboard. And that wasn't a big deal because there's only 22 records, but if it was thousands of records, I'd be waiting a couple seconds or so. So frequently while I was building it, I realized I actually wanted to turn off the ability to click on this and bring me to the other place. And just as a quick reminder, where you do that over here in the template where it says template action. You can set this to no action selected. Click save, and now I can just click here all day long and it's not gonna take me any other place. A great thing probably to set up while you are working on these, because you might often find yourself going back and forth and saying, I don't know if I like it now that I've seen it full size, and you'll click on it or click the wrong place. So that's just my little tip to you. Okay, we talked about user inputs up at the dashboard level. Next week, we'll be talking about date, time, arithmetic, and formatting. Talked about palettes, how to shut off the template action, and how to print, and what ends up printing. So if you have any questions on today's topic, now is the time to enter them into the GoToWebinar control panel. If you don't, but have questions at a future time, of course, you can send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. And let's see, it looks like something has come in. Can you show how you imported the color palette again? Yeah, sure, absolutely. So it wasn't exactly an import. The first thing I did was I went to this color palette picker called coolors.co. But honestly, the way I found it was by typing in palette generator into Google. There are a million of these things. And then at the bottom, I made note of each of these hexadecimal values. So I wrote them down just on a piece of paper. So there's the opal, the tea, the blue yonder, dark cornflower, and phthalo blue. I don't know if I pronounced that right. And then when I went back into my dashboard, for this particular tile, I set that color, and that was the opal color. I set that just in the template. So I created a div, and I said background color equals, and then there's the hexadecimal value that I scraped from the website. Okay. And for this one, service calls by technician and billable minutes by technician, each of those gets set up under, I think it's under graph group. So if you are in a tile, you can have graph group. Now this graph group, because there's only one type of bar chart, this isn't a stacked bar chart or a donut bar chart or whatever, only requires me to specify one color. So I went with this one, the pound 647AA3, also known as blue yonder, and I pasted that in, and that's how I got that color. And then here it was the same deal. I just went in, edit tile, graph group, and here's a different color here. This is the tea green. If I had a donut chart, like I've done here, let's pop over the donut chart, give me a moment. You can set multiple colors. Let me just show you quickly how that's done. And like I said, I always repeat the palette thing because I really think it makes a big difference to have colors that are coordinated when you're doing a presentation. So let's take a look at the graph group here. And because this is a donut group, and I knew that there was going to be only 3 kinds of things, I specified my 3 colors, each separated by a comma. And that's how I got those colors right there. All right, that looks like the end of questions. Thanks very much, everyone, for showing up. Really appreciate it. Like I said, next week we'll be talking about date and time arithmetic and formatting, which you use a lot in dashboards, but can also be used in your forms. It's in the forms themselves. But until then, if you have any questions, send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. Thanks very much, and hope to see you next week. Take care and stay well. Bye-bye.